Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Dave, and this is my podcast. In this season, we meet contributors to a new book, Deathworlds to Lifeworlds, Collaboration with Strangers for Personal, Social, and Ecological Transformation, published by De Gruyter in Berlin. Today, we meet Dr. Valerie Grossman, an educator and counselor. She founded and oversees Reach Canada, Inc., a volunteer nonprofit organization whose mission is helping people help themselves via health and education programs. Her chapter is titled Sustaining Life Worlds in the Face of Famine, Water Shortages, and Malaria. Dr. Grossman presents 3 distinct death worlds she encountered and how she reversed human suffering in each. Please welcome with me Dr. Valerie Grossman. Valerie, in part 1 of your chapter, we find an account of your action research project, a visit to Mizoram, the easternmost province of India, where the people endure periodic famine at a rate of just over once per generation. Tell us about the lessons you learned and the challenges you experienced as you reached out to this mostly Christian population.
Thank you for the question. It was a very, very interesting time in my life, and one that I wasn't planning on. And that was because I'd entered a culture as a Westerner, and I realized quite quickly that I knew nothing about the culture I had come to. I was definitely an outsider. And
so what did you find the people to be like in Mizoram?
The people, even though they're a state of India, the state, Mizoram lies between Bangladesh and Myanmar. It's in the hill country. They're very isolated. The people are, they're actually of Asian descent. They are not Indians, they're Asian. And after time, I learned that they had come on the Silk Route, and that's how they ended up there. And the only reason that they were part of India, they think, and probably I think too, is because they're a buffer for India from the other countries around. And there's really only one road into Mizoram. And at the time I was going, there were flights only twice a week from Indian Airlines, and they, whenever they decided, they just stopped the flight. For example, everything was different. And the people, as you asked, the people are, they're lovely, but it's a closed culture. It's high contact, closed culture. So what that means for me, or what that meant for me as an outsider, at least at the beginning, was that I wasn't told what was really going on. I was not informed about what would happen or what wouldn't happen. I just, if I get invited to church, it'll be an indicator that maybe that I have some acceptance. I'm not just a complete outsider staying at government house, and they're gonna, you know, they'll do what they have to, but they won't do anything more. So
does this this tapestry behind you, is that a depiction of Mizoram?
Yes, it is. It's flatter. It's flatter than Mizoram. Mizoram is, you have to have good legs and you have to be able to walk in Mizoram, and you can't be handicapped in Mizoram. That's just, you don't survive well there. It's very, very hilly. The main city, Aizawl, is built at the top of a mountain, and all the houses that are built on the roads, they all hang off the edge of the mountain. So if you don't want something, I was invited to I was invited to a villager's house for tea. Well, the inside of the house was made of bamboo, and the fronds were the roof. And so I'm invited into this villager's house for tea, and I'm thinking, okay, I can do this. I can do this. I can really do this. So I sit down, and they have no windows. They're just open places, and they have a bamboo closure that closes it up from the rain and at night. And I'm sitting there, and they have a stone, like a stone circle, and they're boiling water on it. And I'm thinking, I don't know where the water's from, but these people are like, they don't bathe like we do at all, especially in the villages, because they don't have access to a lot of water. That's a whole other issue that we've helped to deal with. But so they boil this water, and then they put it in this cup that's for my standards is not all that sanitary. And I'm thinking, I'm afraid to drink the water. I'm afraid to drink the water. What am I going to do? So I put it up to my lips, and I am pretending, and then they turn to do something, and I flip it out the window, and then I sit with my tea. And, the challenges, they just kept coming, and I just had to learn to bracket my expectations and what I thought might happen. All the time, I had no idea.
Was the shortage of water part of the famine problem that they experienced?
No, it didn't have anything to do with that. They usually have a rainy season, and they grow dry rice, and they have mixed cropping. They have actually stuff to teach us in the West about, especially now, but they have enough water. They have to sometimes climb down for it or climb up for it to get to the streams, but they can access water. It's not
so
always
tell me,
tight.
how did the famine come into the story, and your role in that?
Researching all the systems of the state, and we were invited there by the chief minister. And at the end of the month of research, we did our reports, and we did what we had to do, and they were thanking us the final evening about, for all that we had contributed. And the minister who was responsible for that evening then did his thank yous and was very kind and nice and everything. And by the way, when we have a famine, and I'm thinking, famine, what are you talking about? Famine. You've got lots to eat here. People are growing their crops. You've got farms. Like what's going on here? Famine. And he didn't say anything else. But he said that it was predicted in 2007 and 8. And I'm thinking, but you're not preparing for famine. Like, I haven't heard anything in all the systems research with agriculture's social systems, everything. I have not heard a word about famine. Like, what are you talking about? So we kept communicating. He put me on to somebody else, and then to somebody else, and they kept answering questions. Mizo they hold their information orally, and so there was no written record of this famine at all. It was held as a story in the culture that was passed on from generation to generation. And so because the lifespan of a Mizo is about 43 years, so most of the culture, except for the living elders, didn't believe that it was real. They just believed that it was a story that was told, and it was passed down from the grandmother to the mother, and now the child has it, and they'll pass this story as well. So they passed the story on, but nobody believed that it was real. The only way that even in the Department of Agriculture, they did not believe it was real. I was assigned a very nice gentleman from the Department of Agriculture. His name was James Lauciamiliana. And I was actually invited to his wedding. But anyway, so he didn't believe that it was happening either. And he was quite high up in the Department of Agriculture. So the only way I would know if it was real was to speak with the elders. But I couldn't get to the elders because the culture was closed. So that took me another 2 years to get. The bamboo is a specific kind of bamboo to the area. It's called Melocanna bacifera. And it blooms every 48 to 50 years. And what they think, they still think, we still don't know, is that when the bamboo blooms, the indigenous rat population, which is, they're small forest rats, and they're quite sweet looking, and they eat fruit and stuff, but when the bamboo blooms, they eat everything, they eat all the fruit of the bamboo quickly. And they multiply from 2 rats to 15,000 rats in the matter of 3 or 4 months. I mean, it's just amazing explosion. And so when there's no more fruit from the bamboo, they literally burst into the fields and destroy a whole field in one night. Like they just eat everything in sight. And that creates famine. Was that people needed to learn how to do things differently. They needed to store their food differently. They have things there called go downs, and they store their rice in go downs. But they had to not spend their money on crops. So in the year 2007, there was a lot of advertising that went on and a lot of teaching to the population, about 1 million people there at that time, 1 million people, was to save their money. Don't spend your money planting crops and growing your crops this year, because this is the year that there is going to be Mizoram, which is famine caused by rats. And if you do that, if you save your money, then when it happens, in the few months that it happens and over the period of time, you can use the money that you would have used to plant to buy food. So secure your food so that the rats can't get it. Save your money. Don't plant your fields. Use the go downs if you can.
That's 1 million people you're talking about. Did everybody go along with the plan?
About 600,000 did, and the other 400,000 didn't. So they didn't believe that there was going to be a famine. They used their money, they planted their fields. Mizoram happened. The fields were cleaned off in like a night. People could go to bed, and in the morning they would have nothing left. It would be all gone. So wow. It was 60% successful. Not what I would have liked to have seen, but it did help 600,000 people, which is better than nothing for sure. And the other thing that came out of it was that I went back after Mizoram. I went back and I did a follow-up study and report on my, not part of what was the research. I went back and did a follow-up report and recommendations that I left with the government of Mizoram, so that they now have a written history of the event and strategies and actions that they can use to prevent the next one, which is, I think, predicted for, I think it's 2059. Yeah.
All right, very good. Thank you. It raises a lot of other questions, but we only have so much time, and I'd like to move to part 2 of your chapter, where you present something completely different. You do what few would dare. You visited an isolated leper colony in Nepal, and while there, you discovered that they were almost completely without fresh water. How did you gain their trust long enough to guide them in changing this life-threatening situation?
Well, I mentioned in the earlier chapter that there was a woman by the name of Vanny Van Thang Quy, who showed up at the government offices in Mizoram several times when I was there, and she would just come in. I was introduced once, and she is Nepalese, she's in Mizoram. So years later, like literally probably 7 or 8 years later, I get an email from Van Thang Quy. She's in Nepal, and she's been to Pokhara, and outside of Pokhara, there's this Majawa, which is this leper village. And to be a member, you have to have a family member who has leprosy. So she emails me and says, I know you help. I know we haven't talked a lot. I'm outside Pokhara and we have a problem. Can you help? And so she talked about what was going on. And at the same time, a former master's student of mine, a master's in leadership student of mine from Royal Roads, I hadn't talked to her for probably 15 years. She was one of my students, and she phoned me and she just wanted to say hi and told me that she was on her way to Nepal. And I'm thinking, really, this is interesting. And so we talked for a bit, and I said, where are you going in Nepal? And she said, well, I'm going to be trekking, and I'm going to going through Pokhara, and I'm going to go up north. And I said, Erin, you know, I just had a communication with somebody who I know from Mizoram, and she's in a place called Majawa, outside of Pokhara, and they have a real problem with water there. Would you be interested? Could you go just take a look for me and see what's there? So she said, no problem, Val, I'll go. So she went, she met Van Thang Quy, she met the Sharma, Suman and Danmeet Sharma, who became part of what was going on. And she said, yeah, you know, Val, if you think you can trust Vanny, then I think maybe we should go ahead and do this. And these people, the type of leprosy that they have is not contagious. And so it was okay for me to be there. I didn't have to worry. And the people were wonderful. They were just wonderful. So what I found there was that the Nepalese government turns the water on twice a week, but they never knew when the water was coming on. So the elders and the children waited for water. And that was what they did every single day. And so that meant the elders couldn't do what they wanted to do. They couldn't help with any of the chores, and it's labor intensive. And the children weren't going to school to get storage tanks. So we got 1,000-liter storage tanks for every house. And then the pipe could go into the storage tank. It was left on. And so the water, whenever the government decided to turn the water on, it went into the storage tank. He said, when the people get the tanks, they won't be standing by the pipe. The children are going to go to school, and the elders are going to be with their families, and they're going to do what they need to do. It was true. The village, the culture had changed in the village. All the children were going to school. It was about 1,000 people, 1,100 people. And it was—
I imagine there was quite a celebration when all of that was finished.
They told me the night before I was leaving that I had to come because the village was going to meet me. And I had to come because they wanted to thank me. I felt so humbled, like these people work so hard. And then they provided juice and cookies. Well, nobody has any money there. Juice and cookies, that's like unheard of. Yeah, it was pretty amazing. I was just, I was brought to tears. And I think about it now and I think, wow, you know, I'm only one person and people say they can't make a difference, but I'm here to tell you that's not true. It's just
Very good.
not true.
Very good. Thank you for all that. Let's move on a bit. In the last section of your piece, you tell how you were diagnosed with malaria. In fact, you had it in your body for years before the discovery.
Yeah.
What was your first thought when the diagnosis came down, and how did you cope with it?
Well, I've been sick for 7 years off and on, having what I thought was a bad flu. I actually contracted it in Mizoram the first time I went to Izal with the research group. I was bitten on my right forearm and didn't think anything about it. Friends, I became close friends with the whole family, but particularly with Happiness. Her name is Happiness, and I had gotten there on a Wednesday, and on Saturday morning, she said, we were standing in the kitchen, and she said to me, Val, I think I've got malaria. And she said, okay, but I want you to get tested just in case, because it sounds like you have malaria. I said, I really don't have malaria. I'm not happy. It's just a waste of a test. She said, no, Val, we're going to go shopping, and then we're going to go to the hospital and we're going to get checked. They draw some blood and you go outside and you wait for 20 minutes, half an hour, and they spin it, and they know what they're looking for, and they come out, you go back in and they tell you. So we went back in, and Happy went in first, and she had malaria. She was right. And I went in smiling, thinking, I don't have anything. I had malaria. My malaria was worse than hers because it had 7 years to become ensconced in my body. Myself, wow. There are people that don't make it from malaria. There are a lot of people that don't make it from malaria. And I'd chosen not to tell my family because I didn't want to worry them. But I recovered and I'm fine, and I've been zero ever since. And yeah, it was an experience for sure.
Wonderful. Let's wrap up with this last question. Valerie, your chapter recounts, I'm just summarizing, how one woman overcame deathworldly circumstances, both communal and personal, returning them to thriving life worlds. So I'm wondering, what words of encouragement can you offer our listeners who may have given up in their efforts to fight their own battles?
I say never give up. And not everyone, or not the people that you might have been working with or being with, might not have the answers that you need. And don't give up. Keep looking. Do things differently. If you think you can help someone, do it. If I can do it, anyone can do it.
Thank you, Val. I really appreciate your coming on and being part of this podcast and telling us about your chapter and your experiences. They're really quite remarkable. If you have any other closing thoughts for people who are watching, feel free.
Closing thoughts. Please take care of yourselves. Be well through this pandemic. If you're interested in helping and you want to look anywhere, you can look at healthreachcanadainc.org. I'm happy to talk to anyone about anything. And please just feel free to reach out.
Okay. Val, thanks
Thank
again.
you.
I really appreciate your coming on.
Thank you.